Jeff Nydegger, welcome to the podcast, my friend. It's a long time coming, and I've been looking forward to this interview since we booked it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on here, man. Thanks, Greg. Looking forward to it. Let's
Awesome.
do it.
I'm looking forward to it too. So let's just get right into it. I've known you for a while now. We were part of a mastermind for a couple of years, and we got to hang out in Mexico a few times. And the more I got to learn about you and see your business and doing Zoom calls and whatnot, I've always been very impressed with your operation you have in Chicago. So before we get into all that stuff, how did you get into real estate? Because I know you've been doing this for quite a long time now.
Yeah, cool. So I've got a business partner, and I guess before that, when I got out of the military in 2006, I was active duty Army. I'd spent a few years overseas. Came out of that, and then I took a job out here outside Chicago, where I'm currently at now, in the suburbs, and didn't love it. Didn't love the whole W-2 thing. So I really wanted to get into real estate like anybody else that is seeking that out. You go find a mentor or a trainer or a course or read books. I did a little bit of all that. The condensed version is, I actually saw a roadside sign, a yellow one that said real estate investor seeks apprentice.
Oh, I've seen those.
That is really, and I don't call on those. I'm not one of those guys that calls off TV stuff. I always feel like it's scamish or schemish. And I did, and I told my wife, so what do you think? And it invited you to an event, and I get how that whole thing goes. And anyway, she said, just go to it, free, and I said, I know, but free things usually cost you, So I went to it, sat in there and bought a real estate course for about $25,000. And we had some money at the time, didn't have that kind of money. But I told my wife, I said, I'm going to quit my job and I want to get into real estate full time. That was 2006. 2007, I left my job. So I worked there about 9 months and started Kendall Partners with my business partner, Kevin. He was working at the time. We bought a house, and as the story goes, made a few bucks, and I gave him a little more than half to kind of prove to him and his wife that this is something viable we could do. And it wasn't, but maybe a few months later, he had left his job, and we started the same thing you see on TV. You buy property, you put some money into it, and you sell it. There was no operations, there was no HR. It was just go do it, and we'll do the work and make it better than it was, and sell it. Hopefully, make some money. And we did, and then we didn't. We lost some money. Lost about $50,000 on our second house.
Oh wow, a little bit of a setback there. Yeah, that happens to everyone. I always say if you haven't broken even or lost a little bit of money on a property, you probably haven't been in the game long enough.
Well, I told my business partner Kevin, because he said I can't afford to do this. This is just he's a little more risk adverse than I am, and that's good for our relationship. There's a joke, because I'm usually like ready, fire, and he's ready, aim, and so we kind of equal each other out. But I just said, Kevin, I this is my education. I had some schooling. Obviously, I spent some time overseas and some leadership training. But that was my education. So that's how we got in. We did short sales for the next about 3 years. Helped a lot of folks out here locally in the Chicagoland market, and bought a lot of real estate. Bought in same day, double close, back when First American Title would allow us to buy and sell same day and use the end buyer's funds to fund the entire purchase. And we took the difference. And until they said we couldn't do that anymore, they said you actually should use money to buy real estate. And I was like, oh, really? So things changed, and we rehabbed houses for probably 6 or 8 years at a pretty good high level. I would say we did 40, 50, 60 a year here in the kind of the North Chicago area, some of the more affluent suburbs. And it wasn't until about 2018 that we got into more of the direct to seller marketing. And so now it's really a sales and marketing business, right? As you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's interesting because you got started at a time when, the entire economy melted basically in 2008, 9, 10, right? So short sales were huge. And, I've done a few of them. I have one right now we're working on that could be a pretty good rental, assuming the bank goes forward with it. And, the big point for the listeners is you always got to be adaptive in your business. You can't do one thing and expect that one thing to work forever. And the fact that you really have only been direct to seller marketing now for almost, 5 years now? I mean, it shows
less than,
you're able to pivot and that has obviously paid dividends for you guys now. And that'll be the theme of our podcast today. But the big takeaway for the listeners is, listen, if you're doing something right now and it's working, you milk that cow for all the milk you can get, but understand, and especially last year when the market got a little squirrely for a while, you have to pivot. And if you're not willing to pivot, especially if you have a team, you're going to put everybody at risk, and you always need to be on your toes. You always need to be kind of forecasting what you think might happen.
Totally.
And, that's a great takeaway. So let's just transition now. We'll start with your biz ops, and then we'll cover the marketing. So you very big business now in Chicago, one of the biggest guys around. That's obviously the third biggest city in the country, I believe. So what does your model look like today when it comes to the actual exit strategies? Because something I want to point out for the listeners is that you're not assigning contracts. You guys actually buy every house that you get into an agreement, which is, it's uncommon in a good way, because a lot of volume flippers are assigning stuff. Nothing wrong with that, but that's a completely different business model than actually closing.
Yeah. You are correct. We buy every house. We go under contract. Of course, there's a little bit of fallout there. Just the nature of being in real estate. We can't and don't perform on every deal. We have the intention to. So I think that's the clear distinction, is that we do have the intent and the capacity. So my goal is to look someone in the eyes, or my team's goal is to look someone in the eyes, say, yes, we're going to buy your house, and we're going to close on it. We have the cash. So when we say we're a cash buyer, we actually are. And yes, a disclaimer there, in my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with wholesaling. I think assigning contracts, should it be done properly, is an excellent business model. As long as it's disclosed, I don't see any reason why you buy and sell, or actually assign and profit on hopefully a same day transaction. I think that's a great thing. Where that falls apart, and yes, you mentioned us being the third or fourth largest city in the country. So when we decided to go to direct to seller, we just said, hey, we don't want to come out and be the next wholesaler. Again, nothing wrong with the model, but we wanted to be able to disclaim and put out on our marketing that we're not assigning. We actually aren't wholesaling. So while our means of attracting business, or for sellers reaching out to us, whether that be PPC, we do a lot of TV. We send out 70 to 80,000 pieces of mail a month. And so all these leads are warm inbound leads, no cold calling, no cold texting, never have. We can actually tell them on the phone that, we're going to come out and visit you, give you an offer, and that offer is for us to purchase the property. And people are wise now, right? There's a lot of wholesalers out there, and people will ask, hey, are you a wholesaler? Now, I don't know about you, Greg, but my mom is almost 80 years old. She does not know what a wholesaler is. So when you talk to these people on the phone and they're asking if you're a wholesaler, it's because they've come in contact with someone, or someone has told them, if you're going to go off market, be aware of wholesalers. So again, we just decided to come out and be a little bit different and say, we're actually going to buy it. So every house we contract that we take to close, we'll actually fund with our own cash and purchase it. And some of those we might sell immediately, and the rest of them we'll do a rehab and a clean out and take to the market. And that pivot, as you mentioned, that always kind of moves with the market. We might do more double close. We might go more to the market. Right now, I'm really pushing our team to take more to the MLS, just because I think the opportunity is really out on the open market for us. So
100%. And I was telling this to my team. I was talking to a business coach, and then I was taking what he told me and implementing it. And it's like, a lot of wholesalers, and I we're in some masterminds where there's some, big dogs doing big things. And you get to a point where, let's say you do 40 houses a month. I mean, it would be very hard to buy 40 houses a month and close on them, right? Like, I'm not doing that. But a lot of wholesalers, and I've said this to wholesalers who do a lot of volume, I say, listen, I understand your business model. I do a portion of it. But if you were to just tweak a few dials and take these home runs that you're wholesaling for 70 grand and put them on the dang MLS, you will make 140 grand on the same lead that took the same amount of time. Yeah, you got to wait 2 or 3 months, but that's just extra revenue from going on the MLS on the same lead at the same price. And you're ultimately going to make more.
I do want to make I want to make a distinction there. I'm in agreement. I want to make a distinction there. I think that for us, it's purely a business decision.
Yeah.
You talk about cash conversion cycle. Of course, when you buy a house and sell a house the same day, effectively your cash conversion is the same day. Yeah. When you buy a house and decide to take it to the market, then you're subject to the market, right? You're subject to the contractors in the city. doing real estate in Illinois, in Northern Illinois, is not an easy business. There have been a lot of operators that have come into the Chicago area market and have fallen flat on their face. They've got a few national brands that have been in here and they've been out pretty quick. We are not an attorney state, but I will tell you that 99% of the transactions that happen, whether they're retail or wholesale or investor or whatever, have an attorney on both sides.
Just like New York. Yep.
It's very much like New York. It's not quite as long as New York, but you have many people with their hands in the pot, and the attorney is the title agent. So they have a lot to win, not just the $300 or $400 or $500 fee that they're being paid, or $700 or $800 fee. They have a lot on the line too. So I say that to say, buying and selling same day is a great business model, because money out, money back in, same day. I love that. When you go to the market, yes, I think, Greg, you're right, that $70,000 deal could be $140,000, but that money, even if it is $70,000 more, might take you another 6 months to get. So it's a matter of operations, and we do both for that reason, because it is nice to have this cash flowing all the time, as opposed to waiting for bigger money down the road. But both.
100%. Yeah. And that's when you can hybrid the both, and you can do a little bit of both, the double closing and then the actual like takedown MLS deals. Like, it's just, you're able to really have that flow, get into that flow from a cash flow perspective, because like you said, if you're just waiting for these home runs to close and you have no revenue coming in the door the next 60 days, I have overhead, you have overhead, those bills are paid every month, right? That's a fixed expense to variable income, which is actually another thing I see with people. They don't do double closes or wholesales, and they have these 300K months, and then they have these goose egg months, and then they have this 400K month, and then a 20K month, and then it all averages out to like, 80 grand a month. But, the vendors need to get paid every month, and that's a fixed agreement.
That's right.
Versus, if we have a project we're finishing up, hopefully in the next week, and like we had an open C of O issue in New York with attorneys everywhere. And they're like, you're not closing this until this gets done. And that revenue that was supposed to actualize in April isn't going to actualize until mid-May, right? And like, that's the reality of this business. And it's interesting you're saying Chicago is very similar to New York, because I've always told people, these big, like you said, these big buyers come to New York, they want to, conquer the world. And say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And they get smoked because they're not aware that the seller has their own representation. They want a real deposit. It's a real contract. There's no like, just push us over the table, have them sign it and put $10 down. Like, that doesn't exist in my area. Like, you have to put down thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. And I think that's often not talked about, is the deposit or the earnest money, right? What we're talking about here. So the consideration given on the deal to, in good faith, right, as your deposit, as some of these purchase agreements or contracts would say, we actually do that. So whether that's $500, which is kind of our boilerplate, I will say that doesn't fly with many attorneys, because that's not standard. You would see maybe a 1% of purchase price, or even up to 2 or 3%. But I was buying bank-owned property in 2010, 11, 12, 13, when we were giving Hubzu and FHA and VA and Fannie Mae $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 non-refundable to buy houses. That's how serious we were there to get the deal, because a lot of investors didn't have the money to deposit out, So even in this day and age, we are actually giving the seller or the seller's attorney, right, an earnest money deposit, that we're not here to play games. Another reason why we can say we're different than wholesalers, because most wholesalers won't put their deposit down. They want to extend until they find their buyer. Again, it's all fine if it's disclosed. It's just not normally disclosed that's what's going on. So
exactly. That's how
but yeah, we couldn't actually have the months where we can't have the months where it's down to zero. We're consistently spending $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a month in marketing investment between the 3 or 4 channels I mentioned. And I know you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, and that's a real, good thing too, is like, when you have barriers to entry, right, in tough markets, Chicago, New York, LA, whatever, that's where there's a lot of opportunity, because a lot of other competitors really don't have the ability to compete, right? If someone is getting an offer and it's the same price, and Jeff's putting down 10 grand and the other wholesaler has no money, it's a no-brainer for that seller to make a decision. Even if Jeff's offer might be lower, there's a lot more certainty provided in that offer versus some guy who's just going to try to flip it, who doesn't even know what they're doing. So I totally, I'm on the same page about that. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned something earlier, you kind of planted the seed, you're doing a lot of inbound marketing, which is in my opinion, the best way to do it. You're just going to convert better. Your team's going to be happier. Conversations are easier within reason, obviously. So what have you found, to be working really well in the last 2 years for your company in terms of the actual channels?
It's a good question. You should probably remember me saying this many, many times on our multipliers calls. We had a marketing call, right, where we kind of discuss strategies. I still say the same thing. I believe, and this is just my opinion from my experience, that direct mail is the foundation for our direct to seller marketing business.
Couldn't agree more.
It is not quick. It's not fast. It's not sexy. It takes time. You spend money today for future revenue. You already mentioned that, but even in this case, you're spending money today for revenue that could be probably no sooner than 60 days out. So we're spending money now for next quarter's revenue. And I think that's something you gotta be aware of. So direct mail has always been something we've done. We've been, even from the short sale days in 2008 and 2009, we were mailing out handwritten letters. Back in the day, I thought we were scaling that business because we were mailing out 50 pieces a month. Now we're mailing 50 pieces a minute, but so I still feel direct mail is the foundation. On top of that, we do quite a bit of TV here in Chicago, and that goes obviously out to the suburbs. You have a little less control over TV because, as that hits the airwaves, whether you're doing digital over the top, OTT, or you're just doing the cable or local networks, your video or your commercial is being displayed everywhere. So that is good and it's bad because it expands your reach, which is the good part. The bad part is if you don't buy in Milwaukee, or if you don't buy in the south side of or the northwest corner of Indiana, which we currently don't, that can be an issue. But we do quite a bit of PPC, branded and unbranded. We do quite a bit of TV, and then the foundation again being direct mail. And I said 70,000, 80,000 pieces a month between both branded and unbranded, both postcard, both letter format. We do greeting cards, and we're very, very consistent with it. Doesn't mean we always mail out 70,000 pieces, but we're very rarely under 50,000 pieces per month.
Totally. And I agree with the direct mail. I've always said to people, like, if you have the ability to be in it for the long haul, like you mentioned, it's consistent and it's a lot of base hit deals. I mean, we've certainly hit some home runs from mail, but the thing I love about mail is that, especially when you really have it optimized, you're only getting those leads in areas you want to buy in versus, like, listen, TV and Google are great. I do Google, not TV, looking into TV, but yeah, you can get those leads from anywhere, right? You can exclude zip codes or whatever, but for the most part, it is a very big shotgun approach. With direct mail, if I'm mailing a list of zip codes that I know I'm buying houses in, the lead might not be as great, but at least it's an area that I really want to buy in. Maybe we can pay a little more, etc. And like you said, you're planting seeds today for revenue tomorrow, versus Google is a little bit more like they're coming in, they're ready to sell now, a little bit shorter of a cash conversion cycle. But I've always found too with the online leads, and this is a blessing and a curse, is that, if you're not calling those leads back within the first 30 seconds, you're at a huge disadvantage because they're probably calling 4 or 5 companies. So if it's going to be a competitive scenario, the first one in the door has a very, very good advantage over the others because it demonstrates to the seller you're serious, you're calling them back, you're prompt, you're to the point. And I found that, we actually got a deal yesterday. We called him back right away, solved this problem. He actually canceled all the other appointments he had set with other people because we don't. But it goes the other way too. We have sellers who are, this was the other day, they're getting 5 offers. That's all they care about. And that's fine. That's understandable. It is what it is. But the point is, you always want to have different lines in the water. And you always want to, I use the analogy, it's like you're fishing in the lake and you never know what fish is going to bite, but you need to have your 5 or 6 hooks out there, because one rod might go crazy with a bass. And then the next day, it was going nowhere. And all of a sudden you reeled up a huge trout and now you're going to eat for the month. So you have to have different channels out there, or else you're constantly just going to be too dependent upon one thing, which might not be going well for a while,
I want to make one point. I agree with you. I want to make one point about the direct mail, and this is from our experience. Lots of ways to do direct mail. Where I've found the most success within our organization is we buy quite a bit of data.
Yeah.
And that started back 10 or 12 years ago, maybe, of buying stuff off of ListSource and some of the public providers where you could tap into a database and pull a list based on whether it be age, race, location, price range, equity, et cetera, et cetera. And I know people still do that. I think they still have success, but I don't do that anymore. We buy a lot of the predictive data. So whether that's through Audantic and providers like that, or 80/20, there's a lot of good, batch leads, and you can pull a lot of data and be very specific and very granular depending on where you want to go. Like you said, this neighborhood, this zip code. And so the good part about direct mail is that we don't necessarily shotgun. Even though we mail out a lot of mail, we're very intentional about who that goes to. And so we don't mail them once either. A couple things with direct mail that we do, I think we do it fairly professionally, at least we try to, is that we mail them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and there's a little bit of a method to that madness as to what they get and when, depending on if they call and when they call, and what conversation is had. If they ask to be removed, we try and do our best to honor that. I think if you're going to be a professional marketer, I think you've got to honor that, especially if your name or your brand's on it. People get upset because they think that if you send them a picture, a Google image on there of their house, they really think, even though it says this is a Google image, I obtained it from a public site, they actually think that you drove by their house and took a picture of it. And so, interesting part about direct mail is it causes some type of emotional reaction almost for many sellers. And they'll call and want to have a conversation about the mail piece, about something that was said or something that wasn't said. And it's almost an inquiring mind. And those calls, from our information anyway, take a little bit longer, and you're building a relationship. So much like my business partner and I have been doing this will be 17 years for us this month. My wife and I have been married almost 21 years. I'd like to think that we build relationships. I think you're doing that a lot of times with sellers too. Maybe you don't have the relationship, but you're mailing to them consistently. And the messaging, I think, does matter. So just mailing is not good, in my opinion. Mailing to the right list, mailing with the right message, because depending on where you're going to catch them, predictive data would say these people are the most likely to sell their home. And they've gathered all this information that says why. There's lots of behavioral science around that, but you're going to catch these people, in my opinion, based on where they're at in the customer journey. They may have never even thought about selling. They may not know that they have to sell. That might come next month, right? But they got your mail piece this month. So when you have a conversation, or I will tell you, we still do deals and get leads off of postcards that we mailed out during COVID, as much as I hate to say that, in 2020. People, you talk about this nice branded card, people will put that on their fridge. That's what we all hope they'll do. And then remember you when they think about selling their house. So you might get lucky sometimes, but that's why you're consistent. And the ones that won't keep that because they're not ready, you have to keep hitting them. So we layer our direct mail and then layer PPC and TV on top of that with the same type of message, the same type of branding, the same type of credibility. We have 200 plus positive Google reviews, credited Better Business Bureau. And so we really push that we're a little bit different than your average home buyer. That type of thing. We're local. We know the market. We live here. All of our team members are here. Almost all 20 of them. They're all here in the office. And so we know the areas, know the towns, and that type of thing.
That goes a long way, Jeff, because we have that too, where people will see that we're actually local to the markets we're in, which sounds counterintuitive, but like I'm a New York guy, Brett's a Delaware guy. So it's like, kind of balances itself out, but that goes a long way, especially nowadays with a lot of people buying in foreign markets where they live in Texas and they're buying in wherever, I don't know, Ohio, and the Ohio person wants to deal with a local person, and they see that the guys from California or whatever, and they're a little kind of skeptical. And just being local, it goes a long way. And just the other point you made with the direct mail, I'll give you a legit case study on that. We had a lady call us about 5 months ago, and she said, I was in contract with another buyer, and they canceled the contract, and I've had your postcard for 2 years, and I want this property off my hands yesterday. And that was a $25,000 deal. So that was revenue that happened 5 months, really 4 months ago, because we closed the wholesale deal. I paid for that marketing over 2 years ago, right? So that's the thing with direct mail. It's like it's perpetual, and it keeps growing, and you never know. Like, even when I run campaigns and we break even in 3 months or whatever, and then everything else is profit, that doesn't account for those leads that are going to come in, like you said, from years before. And that's why the momentum of direct mail and the messaging, like you said, matters. When you send someone 6 postcards and they go, I've got your 6th postcard, my tenant just stopped paying rent, you guys are the company I want to work with. It's a lot easier to sell at that point, because the marketing is doing a lot of the selling for you. And they already understand that, okay, you're from Kendall Partners, you guys buy locally, I looked you up online, I did my research on you, this is a company I want to work with. It really makes the sales process go that much better. So when you can combine all those marketing channels, and especially if you can really lean more into the inbound marketing, I've just found from like being a leader, being, the owner operator, like, you want your team to have productive conversations and ultimately solve problems, right, for a profit. And when you are cold calling a lot and texting, and we still do a little bit of that too, but you're really kind of, the seller's guard is already up because they got some spam call. And now you have to overcome that to then get to the actual conversation to see if they have a problem you can solve. When they're calling you, you're already bypassing that for the most part, and you can get right to the point versus having to overcome, a reasonable objection, because I don't answer spam calls. Like, I get a bunch of them. I put in a voicemail, right? So it's being
100%.
marketing is really important. So as we get towards the end of this interview, my friend, I mean, this has been really fun, just kind of getting to interview you, kind of getting into your mind, what has made you successful consistently. Let's say we have a new real estate, and actually, let's talk about an investor who wants to get to the next level, because I think you really, have dialed in your ability to grow your business. Let's say there's an investor listening to this, they're doing a couple houses a month, they're full-time, they're making money, and they really want to get to the next level. What would be the best advice you can give them on how they can appropriately get to the next level so they don't scale themselves into chaos? Because I see a lot of people, they don't optimize before they expand, and they blow themselves up. So what have you done, I guess, to really make sure that as you've grown, you've done it the right way, right? Because that's a big deal for people.
It is, and that's a good question. And I get that question a lot. It makes me think, and I feel like I want to provide a very consistent answer. I think getting clear on your objectives. I think you don't need to, or at least you should be careful of comparing yourself to others. Meaning, Greg's got a business in New York. I know you do some stuff in California. I've got a business in the Chicago and Chicago suburbs market. It's different in Tampa. It's different in Spokane, Washington. And I know those are two extremes and two opposite sides of the country, but the business is different. The policies and procedures are different. Like I said, I don't think, and this isn't to scare anybody out of the Chicago market. Anybody that does business here knows it can be difficult. There's a high barrier to entry. So I think I'd be careful there. I think it's good to get information from you. I think it's good to get information from me, and then you got to make your own assumptions and your own decisions that are applicable to your market. So figure out who you want to be and what you want to do there. If that's flipping or wholesaling or method. There's so many ways, right? But you still have to get your house or your hands on the right house. I think the marketing, I think what you need to spend or what your investment can be is important. Unless you're going to go knock doors, which I don't know of anybody doing that anymore. But if they are, it's still probably very interesting to me to do. I think it's that. I think I would find a mentor. I think there's so much information out there. I know your podcast, and there's lots of good information. There's also a lot of information that I don't think is all that great. I think when you turn something on, if it's good. You're in the business, Greg. If this person actually does deals, or if they're just a really good marketer.
Big deal.
I think there's a difference. There's a difference there, but so I think, and I just presented on this to a large investor group out here in Chicago about 3 weeks ago, and I basically said, my opinion of growing a real estate organization or doing, like you said, maybe from 2 deals to 4 deals or 5 deals, it's a team sport. Again, this is just my opinion. You can do it on your own. I think it's hard. I'm very spoiled because I've got a great business partner in Kevin. He's, as Chris Arnold used to always say that, Kevin is the tether to your balloon, right? Because I want to go out and fly away and do all these things. And Kevin's like, nah, we need to figure out this one thing first. And that's true. So I would say if you don't have a business partner, go find someone to do business with. Gosh, it's a lot more fun to collaborate with people
So
that,
true, bro.
have your back. And just, it really is. And this is more speaking to the full timers, but even if you're part-time, find somebody you can do business with. If you're a really good investor or you have a good financial mind, but maybe you're going to rehab, well, that next key partner, in my opinion, is going to be that contractor. So maybe you go find a general contractor partner. It's a very common setup. I know you've seen it too, Greg. You find somebody that's really good in the trades and has the relationships. Well, that's a critical part to being a fix and flipper. And that's how most people start. If they're not going to wholesale, they're going to go in and buy that house, add value, and then shoot for the market. And I think that's a great way too. But I think it's partnerships. In Illinois, you need a title company. In Illinois, you need an attorney or attorneys. You're going to need surveys. So I think once you build this out, you've got this large network now of people that you have, brokers, lenders, hard money, conventional. You need to start talking to people, because when the deal comes, you need to be able to fund it. And I'm guessing most of your listeners and viewers aren't independently wealthy, where they can just do whatever they want and there's no cost of funds.
Yeah.
Dial in some of those relationships. You can, all that information's out there now, and people like yourself promote good people. I know I do. I'm willing to point people in the right direction and make good referrals, because man, if I can help someone else's business that's helped me, I'm like, use more people like that. So I think it's a team sport. I think it's getting clear on what your goals and objectives are. And then, you got to follow with your feet. I think you got to take action. I think a lot of people just kind of sit on the sidelines and wait for this perfect market and 4% rates. And that wave bye a long time ago, right?
Yeah, that was gonzo last year.
No, it's gone. So I think, I think don't wait for this perfect thing. I do think you should make informed, wise decisions. So be careful where you're getting your information, build a team, and get clear on what you want to do, because you don't need to do what everybody else is doing.
That's such great information. And I'm glad you gave a very detailed answer like that, because I know two sets of people, and I'm sure you could agree with this. I have people that I know that make $500,000 a year. They don't have a CRM, and they get all their deals from realtors, right? And then I have other friends who have big wholesaling businesses. They certainly don't make 500 grand a year. They have chaos running around all day long. They're in 17 markets, and they don't know their butt from their elbow, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking that. But the point is, you can make this business however you want it to be, right? You doesn't need, and that's the one drawback of masterminds. I mean, there's way more benefits and drawbacks, but I've found myself going into some masterminds before where I saw what Rick Jones was doing. I'm just making that up. And I'm like, oh my God, Rick's doing 7 more deals a month than me. There's something wrong with him. But then if you don't get clear on why you're in the business and what you want out of it, you'll always be comparing yourself to the next guy. And there's always a next guy. Yeah. If Jeff and I were doing 200 houses a month, we would look at Sam Zell and say, oh my God, Sam Zell is so much better than us. We're a bunch of failures, right? So don't get caught in this comparison trap. Get clear on what you want, build the team out. I think that's very concrete advice, Jeff. I really do appreciate you coming on the show, my friend. If people want to connect with your company, maybe they're in Chicago or they know someone who wants to sell, what's the best website to direct them to if they want to get in touch with your company to potentially work with you guys?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, we have 2 brands. Kendall Partners is the main home buying business that's been around since 2007. So Kendall Partners, we've got a team of almost 20. We are buying 20 houses a month-ish. And what you'd see on the outward facing side from the seller side is jeffbuysyourhouse.com.
Oh,
so that's the TV brand. That's the pay-per-click brand. You'll see my ugly mug on there with a smile. No, I mean, we want to convey a very genuine brand out there. I think we do a really good job. And I do want to say one thing about our team that makes up the brand, because you don't really get Jeff anymore. I'm out of the operations. I don't look at houses or take pictures, or it's not that I won't. I've got a really good team, and they're really a lot better than I am. But jeffbuysyourhouse.com is really the top of funnel. That's where the majority of the lead flow comes in. That would be a great place. And if you have a deal and you're in Chicago, or you're struggling, or you have questions, reach out to us. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. Jeff Nydegger. There's a few of them out there, but it's not that common with Kendall Partners. And we could connect. We'll buy houses from wholesalers. We partner with them all the time. And, kind of revive deals that aren't going so well. Because we'll come in and we have the intent and the capacity, and we'll close and hopefully make all of us look good and a seller happy at the end of the day.
That's amazing. And that's what matters most. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes, Jeff. It's an honor to talk to you, my friend. It's always good connecting with you. Really think the people are going to get a lot of value from today's episode, and I'm looking forward to this thing going out into the atmosphere.
Me too. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Greg.
You're welcome, buddy.